Now, this is something to crow about. They might not seem to be the smartest creatures in the world, but some crows actually have brains bigger than yours, in proportion to the rest of their bodies, of course. The New Caledonian crow has a brain that makes up nearly 3% of its total body weight. The proportion is similar to that in dolphins and great apes. An adult human's brain only weighs around 2% of their body weight. I think mine's lower than that. Research has also shown that the crow's forebrains are more packed with neurons than those of primates. This area of the brain defines the intelligence of an animal. So, more neurons means better cognitive reasoning. They could even be the smartest non-humans on the planet and smarter than 7-year-old humans. Scientists offered 6 wild crows a series of tests to see how well they understand causal relationships. The tests were based on Aesop's fable, where a thirsty crow was dropping rocks to raise the water level in a pitcher. The real-life crows had to drop heavy objects into tubes filled with water. The birds were given a choice of objects to drop. They knew they had to choose solid and not hollow objects to drop, and a tube filled with water and not sand. They also opted for the tube with a higher level of water, knowing it would get them to the final goal with less work. All of the birds have successfully solved the puzzle, unlike little humans aged 4 to 6 and faster than 7-year-olds. Another experiment has proved that crows are capable of analogical thinking. The smart birds were given a tray with 3 cups on it. The middle cup had a card on it with a color, a shape, or a number. The side cups also had images on top of them, one the same as on the middle cup and one different from it. There was food inside the cup with a matching picture. Crows quickly figured out how it all worked and started choosing matching cards to get the treat. During the next round of the experiment, they got cards with pairs of items on it. These were pairs of identical items on 2 of the cards, let's say 2 circles and 2 triangles. The remaining 2 cards had diverse images, a circle with a heart and a square with a triangle. So they had to find a match for a card with 2 identical items and 2 different items. The birds instantly figured out the task and picked the right cards each time. No dummies there. Crows thrive on every continent except Antarctica and South America. Crows and their close relatives, ravens, magpies, and jays, have learned not only to survive among humans, but to make use of this relationship. Crows who live in cities in America and Japan, for example, have learned to drop tough nuts onto streets with heavy traffic and wait for the vehicles to crush the nuts for them. Then the birds wait for traffic lights to go green for pedestrians and safely pick up the treats from the ground. In 2011, a team from the University of Washington proved that crows can recognize human faces and remember their enemies. One researcher put on a caveman mask, and another one wore a Dick Cheney mask. The caveman visited 5 sites to catch and ban some wild crows. Once they were released, the birds made some loud, angry caws. They did it to warn their pals there was a bold intruder nearby. The pals would then fly over to punish the Neanderthal with some pretty angry sounds. The experiments Dick Cheney did pretty much nothing. Scientists would revisit the exact same spots for 5 years, and the birds would always greet the caveman with angry scolds and ignore Dick Cheney. Some of the birds who took part in the original experiment were not even alive anymore, but it looked like they had passed down the knowledge to their young. They can also, somehow, tell if a human presents a direct threat to them or is just minding their own business. Crows take off much sooner when they notice a person moving their way and staring at them. Most birds and other animals prefer to run away when humans are approaching, even when they're just strolling by. Crows feel when it's okay to stay relaxed and when they must escape danger. Family means a lot to crows. They normally find one partner for life and live in pairs or small family groups. In the cold wintertime, they join hundreds and even thousands of their peers to survive the nights in a unit called a roost. During the nesting season, young crows help their parents defend the nest from many intruders. They can also bring food to their parents or directly to the youngest siblings. It's like takeout. Some birds keep helping their parents for several years. Crows also make friends for life and form huge gangs to protect themselves from predators. They swoop in to harass any unwanted aggressive guests, and even go after larger birds like owls or hawks or other animals. Sometimes they also get together to steal food from larger creatures. Some members of the group distract the predator's attention, while others do the sneaky business. Now, it may all sound like caw, caw to you, but crows have a whole variety of sounds, and each of them means something to others of their kind. They can warn prospective intruders that they're about to enter their territory or let their relatives know their location. That language isn't universal. It varies from valley to valley, pretty much like regional dialects. If a crow decides to join a new flock for some reason, it will have to learn to caw their language by mimicking the sounds of other members of the new flock. Crows have more self-control than many people. If someone offered you a treat you could get right now and another, more delicious one you'd have to wait for, what would you choose? The smarty pants with feathers have proven they know that waiting a bit pays off. Researchers first tested the crow's dietary preferences: bread, grapes, sausage, fried pork fat, and other treats. Each of the birds had their favorites. Then they offered them their least favorite food. After a few seconds to 10 minutes, the researchers offered the birdies a more delicious treat or a bigger portion of the same snack. They had the option to grab whatever they got and fly, but that would mean no hope of getting a better treat. The participating crows chose to wait only for a higher quality snack they'd enjoy more. They didn't want to wait to get the second portion of the same old snack. Only when they got the desired food would the participants leave the testing grounds. Other birds, like pigeons, chickens, and gray parrots, didn't show that kind of patience and self-control during the same experiment. Our heroes of the day never waste food. When they have too much of it, they hide it in caches for later in some secret spots or in leaves or other objects. Once they feel hungry again, they know exactly where to go to find their supplies. Sometimes they also add some markers on the top of the cache to remember where it was, or move food from spot to spot to protect it from some other hungry mouths. They also know which food goes bad first and finish meat before other types of meals, like nuts or bread, that stay good for longer. Crows also craft and use their own tools. They've learned to carve thin strips of wood and skewers and bend wires into hooks to pick up food that is out of reach. They remember the design and recreate the same kind of tool. Crows also know how to combine materials that wouldn't work separately to build one complex tool. Only humans and great apes were known to do something like that before. It also looks like crows enjoy the process of making and using a tool. Their behavior changes after successfully using a tool, just like we humans feel happy after finishing a complicated work assignment. It's a mystery. Nobody knows exactly who created this substance. Was it nature or some scientist in a fancy lab somewhere? It's spreading quickly. The stuff gets into every human, animal, even the tiniest insect. All of humanity's experiencing euphoria, but that feeling won't last forever. This new molecule attaches itself to all living DNA and makes it immortal. That's how it starts. For the past few months, you've been sitting at home in an information vacuum. No internet, no TV, no news. You turned off your phone and canceled all your plans with your friends so that nobody can distract you. Only with this drastic plan will you be able to finish writing your book. You sit in your rented house on the edge of town, writing every day. You have absolutely no idea what's going on in the world. And now, finally, the book is finished. You grab your bike and head off to celebrate with a beautiful ride around town. The streets are full of people. You ride along a narrow street until you reach the town square. There's a pretty big crowd, and you accidentally crash into a young guy. You say you're very sorry, but the guy looks somehow extra happy. He says he's fine. You notice that the crowd of people is shouting positive slogans, and everyone's in a really good mood. You pick up your bike and look down at yourself. You seem fine, but the fall was kind of painful. Better go to the hospital just in case, you think, and leave the square. You've never seen such an empty hospital before. You approach reception and ask for a doctor or a nurse who's ever free. The receptionist looks at you with that face that says, "What's this guy's deal?" You say you hurt yourself falling off a bike. "Where have you been in the last few weeks?" the receptionist asks. You notice that, actually, your body doesn't hurt anymore. Huh, how's that even possible? You look around and realize that there's no one else in the building except you and the weirded-out receptionist. Where are all the people? You run out into the street, pull out your phone, and read the latest news. An unusual molecule is spreading around the world, making people immortal. The human heart now beats forever. Any damage heals in a matter of minutes. There are no more diseases. Everyone's been cured. Not only that, everyone's suddenly in excellent shape. Scientists are still trying to figure out what this molecule is, but while they're doing that, people all over the world are celebrating. It's the beginning of eternal life. A year passes. Hospitals are closing all over the world. Doctors have no one left to heal. Vets are also out of work because animals also live forever now. Health insurance companies go bankrupt, so do life insurance firms. Never in all of history have people felt so safe. A year later, the economy goes crazy. In every field, the story's the same. From drivers to coal miners to psychologists to musicians to influencers. Even just working a regular cash register at the supermarket. The competition is insane. The population is way bigger, so there's thousands of people showing up to every interview. More people, more mouths. Food and clothes become even more expensive. 5 years later, you can no longer go out into the city and find a quiet street to walk on. There's always a crowd of people. A huge number of new houses are built. Prices for real estate, internet, electricity, every service, it all just keeps rising. And at the same time, it's more and more difficult to earn good money. Many people just lose their jobs. Scientists are sounding the alarm. In 50 years, there'll be almost no space left on Earth. But that isn't even the main problem. Insects now live forever too. Locusts, beetles, mosquitoes, spiders, flies, there are trillions of them. Pests eat everything. Fields are empty. Bees, bats, and spiders usually help out by chomping on their share of insects. But now the whole system's gone out of whack. They, and by that I mean every insect in the world, become more aggressive and start to attack small towns and villages. Herbivores are everywhere, because why bother chasing after food? A lion can just wait around. Eventually, something's just gonna land in its lap. Lions, tigers, leopards, wolves, hyenas. They get lazy and fat. Wild animals fill city streets. The hottest new job? The control and capture of wild animals. And it's not exactly an easy job. You try chasing down a hyena in a 3-story parking lot. By the way, all living things can now sort of live without food. But everyone still feels hungry, and if you don't eat, your body will definitely start feeling weak. Some vloggers tried to find out how long they could last without food. Turns out that the body can live forever without nutrients, but after about a month, you'll just fall into a deep dream. It's like your brain puts you into sleep mode. Unemployment is finally getting under control. There are millions of new construction jobs. What's the big new project? Well, people are building cities in the oceans and creating aerial towns, held up by a million helicopter-like thingies. So now, everyone has a place to live. The only problem? Humans are running out of natural resources fast. 50 years later, the Earth is inhabited by more than 50 billion people. Almost every forest is long gone, and freshwater sources are running dry. People stop catching animals, they simply learn to live with them. You can have a monkey, a porcupine, and a monitor lizard in your house, all at the same time. It seems that animals have figured out that there's no point being afraid of humans or each other. Plus, humans and animals are everywhere, so there's not a lot of options. People finally managed to stop insects from spreading everywhere. Chemists and biologists teamed up to create a substance that puts all pests in an eternal sleep. It gets sprayed on every crop now. Scientists also generated artificial food using simple chemical elements. But still, there's not enough food, and even with those ocean cities and floating towns, people are running out of room faster than ever. Humans institute a ban on any new ocean cities. Phytoplankton and seaweed are essential for maintaining oxygen levels, and since there are almost no trees left, oceans have become even more important. The floating towns turn out to be a ridiculously bad idea. They release a huge amount of greenhouse gases, which makes breathing more challenging. Next plan? Space. The International Space Station is no longer the only huge thing in Earth's orbit. The wealthy build orbiting mansions with simulated Earth conditions. These huge, fancy space homes are crazy expensive and eat up even more natural resources. 75 years later, Mars and the Moon have been colonized, but people don't live there. They sleep, kinda. To reduce the burden on the Earth, people decided to live off-planet in turns. 1/3 of the population remains on Earth. The other part goes into cryogenic sleep for 5 years at a time. Cryogenic capsules are sent to Mars and the Moon. As soon as a human wakes up, they return to Earth and switch places with someone else. Every year, the amount of people in cryo chambers gets bigger and bigger. The next idea is to send out a fleet of unmanned spacecraft to try and find a habitable planet or moon somewhere. But to do this, people need to use up even more natural resources: gold, copper, silver, water, wood, oil, minerals, and metals. Humanity starts exploring Mars and the Moon, desperate to find something useful for building better spaceships. Some Earthlings are now celebrating their 150th birthday and have become incredibly smart and wise. They understand that it's time to stop the uncontrolled population growth, at least for a while. In the next 60 years, not a single person is born. Astrophysicists are still looking for planets in space that are suitable for life, and still figuring out how to get there. 1,000 years later, and humans now inhabit a bunch of new Earth-like planets. Our home, Earth, is completely devastated. There are no humans left there. And for some reason, the further we get from Earth, the more people are born with immunity to the immortal molecule. After all this time, people are living normal life cycles again, just not on this planet.
You call your beloved cat to have his dinner, Sir Scratchy. Suddenly, you hear loud stomping. The dishes on the dinner table clink with every thump. A painting's fallen off the wall. Is it an earthquake? No, that's a cat the size of a pony walking into the dining room. It needs 10 times as much food as the average cat. And it purrs like a tractor. No, Scratchy, stop rolling. You'll turn over the cupboard. Well, this is one possible scenario for the evolution of animals in the future. Climate, water, oxygen in the air, and even gravity are factors that influence the course of evolution. For example, scientists predict that some bird species will gradually lose their warm feathers. In the future, they will basically look like sphinx cats with beaks and wings. The same thing might happen to our pets. Gradually, their fur will become shorter until they're completely bald. Urban pests like pigeons and rats will become even bigger, the size of a cat. A few million years ago, rats were barely the size of your little finger. That's because they hid in small burrows and had to be nearly invisible to large predators. Now, they live in comfortable cellars that humans have built. They can create cozy nests there, and the large amount of food in trash cans keeps them from starving. So they feel quite comfortable and continue to grow in size. Even more, rats have already developed oily fur so that dirty or toxic water can run off them without harming the rodents themselves. Plant-eating mammals, on the other hand, might have it worse. Their food will gradually diminish. With time, There will be fewer forests and greenery on the planet, and some plants will disappear altogether. Eventually, animals like deer, elephants, giraffes, and others will get smaller and smaller because of the lack of food. In addition to shrinking, mammals will have smaller eyes so they don't lose water from their bodies, and their ears will become larger to lose heat through them. Their tails will grow longer to swat away insects. As land mammals become smaller, birds will increase in size. That's because they'll be able to include shrinking animals in their diet, and the muscles of birds will become much stronger because they'll have to fly long distances in search of food. Animals in hot and dry places are more likely to learn how to get water from the air. To do so, they'll need long sails or skin flaps. Early in the morning, when the air is coolest, moisture will accumulate on these new body parts, and some lizards will evolve their collars to a much larger size. Then they'll be able to collect more rainwater. As for the marine world, we can already see some fish jumping out of the water to catch insects. In the course of evolution, fish fins may become longer and stronger so that they can leap further. And gradually, those fins will turn into wings to make them truly flying fish. Perhaps in the future, these fish will hunt small birds. To do that, they'll learn to hold their breath for longer and fly much higher. But the big fish and marine mammals will have a hard time. The ocean will heat up, and some species will begin to disappear. The largest inhabitant of the aquatic world, the blue whale, which is the size of 2 school buses, will shrink in size because there will be less food for it in the ocean. But the population of lizards and reptiles will thrive. They're good at absorbing heat. And with climate change, there will be more insects on our planet, which means more food for lizards. They'll start to increase in size. But now, they'll have to defend themselves against big birds. Their legs will become longer and stronger, so they'll be able to run a lot faster and not get eaten by a bird. And the insects? Well, they'll just explode. Insects will probably live in huge swarms and fly around looking for food. And they'll be angry and hungry because their usual source of food, mammals, will have either ceased to exist or shrunk in size. Humans will change too. Scientists predict that between 1,000 and 1 million years from now, we will completely lose our hair. Our limbs will become thinner and longer, and will be about 7 feet tall. Our feet will most likely lose their toes because they're no longer needed to keep our balance. Our head and brain will become more like a balloon, and our lifespan will be more than 100 years. Because humans are at the top of the food chain and don't take part in natural selection, we'll gradually become similar to each other. In tens of millions of years, all humans will probably look the same. Plus, we're developing genetic engineering technology. Luminous rabbits, incredibly sized cows, web-weaving goats, super muscular pigs, and more. But we're more interested in how animals will evolve on their own. So, fast forward ahead in time. Humans have long lived on other planets and in other galaxies. Earth has long since become home to animals and plants. The only traces of humans here are giant cities made of metal and concrete that are buried deep underground. And up there, incredible creatures like the Necropteryx live. It's something between an ostrich and a vulture, the size of an adult human. Its long and powerful beak is its main tool for protection against predators and for eating. Their strong legs with long claws make them excellent runners. This creature can walk dozens of miles in a day. Necropteryx needs warm fur or feathers. Without humans and the greenhouse effect, the temperature on Earth has dropped. But with a warm jacket, they'll be able to survive even a new ice age. And like ostriches, they reproduce by laying eggs. This is a parashrew. It's like a common shrew, a couple of inches long. But it has an unusual feature, a parachute on its tail. While little, they live in their parents' nests, but when they leave them, they launch themselves into the air and then open a parachute made of thin fur. The warm currents of air rise up and carry them. They can spend up to 24 hours in the air. Then, they'll nest elsewhere, and their babies will leave their home the same way. The waka. Waka waka. This animal looks like a striped giraffe with only 2 legs. It'll be one of the fastest creatures on our planet. No predator can beat it in a race. Plus, their eyes are perched high on their head, and with its long neck, the waka can see a threat even when sitting in tall grass. Terabytes are descendants of termites that will appear on Earth in 200 million years. If they see a threat, they'll spew a stream of chemicals, something like acid, from their huge head. Even the biggest predators will be afraid to approach them. Reed stilts are about 3.5 feet tall and weigh almost as much as an adult human. Thanks to its striped coloring, a reed stilt is almost invisible in the reeds. It walks on its thin legs through marshy terrain and feeds on small fish. Its long neck and sharp teeth allow it to dash into the water, almost cobra-like. It catches fish and swallows them almost whole. But all of these predictions are very speculative. There are billions of factors that influence the course of evolution. The course of evolution could go the other way at any time. For example, an asteroid hits the Earth, causing a mass extinction and changing our planet's climate. A small percentage of surviving organisms begin to adapt to the new conditions. In a few million years, we'll have animals that none of us could have even imagined.